Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, technology connoisseurs. I hope your palates are fully cleansed because we have some virtual taste sensations coming your way today. A whole charcuterie board full of tasty tech nibbles for us to gorge ourselves upon, carefully carried into the studio by none other than our technological culinary master, Mr. Matthew Dickerson. Welcome to the microphone, Matthew.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I had an interesting conversation this week. I discovered a new app, and I don't like to try and do app recommendations because there are so many sites and websites that do that. But I stumbled across one. Well, I lie. Someone I know very closely stumbled across one and told me about it, and I went, that's pretty cool. I'm going to look at that a bit more. And it's actually a bit of a combination of Tamagotchi, where if you remember the Tamagotchi toys, you had to keep feeding them, keep looking after them, making sure that they were kept alive.
Yeah, a minor distraction that became a major distraction.
Well, true.
Yeah.
And what this app, and there's a few of these apps I found after I discovered one, I found a few of them. What the idea of these apps is that they try and keep you focused, and the reward is that you get to keep something alive. Now, it's virtual, so it's not real.
Right.
But, for example...
Sorry, not you get to keep something alive, but something that was alive doesn't die because of your lack of
And it's a virtual thing
discipline.
still. A virtual, keep it in mind, I'm not talking about real things here, I'm just about virtual. So, for example, I've got to finish a project, and I'm really focusing on that, and my phone keeps distracting me, and I've got no willpower. I can't keep away from that phone. I load this app up and I say, I'm going to work on this project for the next 30 minutes, say. And I do that, and if I cannot touch my phone and stay away from my phone for 30 minutes, my reward is my plant gets a bit of water and stays alive.
There you go.
If I go and I can't resist and I reach out for my phone that 30 minutes, my plant might die straight away, or maybe not get enough water, maybe not enough food. So
depending on what stupid app you've actually downloaded to distract yourself with.
Correct.
Right,
that's right.
Okay.
And then you've got a certain amount of time. Now, you set the parameters, of course. You say, I want 30 minutes of work time, and then I'm going to have a 5-minute break or a 2-minute break or whatever you want. And then, of course, if you go over your break time, your plant starts to wither and die or starts to suffer. So just like the Tamagotchi had to keep it alive, the idea of this is to keep the plant alive in one of them. So keeping the plant alive involves you staying away from it for a certain amount of time and then tending to it or doing something for a certain amount of time. So we're at the point now where we've got so little willpower that we can't trust ourselves to stay away.
And we're going to zero in on our guilt complexes.
And the irony here, of course, is that we're using an app to keep us away from our apps. There's something wonderful about that. I thought about it as I was looking at it, playing with it. So let me just get this right. I'm going to use this to stop me using this. There's something that's gone wrong in society maybe here. But for those people who can't stay away from it, there are a number of those ones out there.
So the other apps are now going to start putting out hate mail on these apps that are telling you to get off the other apps.
Leave us alone. Leave us alone. Let people play with us. But it is funny, isn't it, that we are at the point where we're so consumed by our phones.
That's right. We just cannot put them down.
We can't put them down. No. So, yeah, fascinating. Anyway, it's something worth trying if you're struggling with that.
Well, in today's episode, we're looking at a wearable that will actually read your emotions, folks. So wait for that one for later. We're looking for new ways to get a seafood delicacy fix that may go some way to solving the problems with overfishing. And we'll look at the advantage of coating aircraft in shark skin, of all things. But more of that to come. Let's tear into this episode with a story that serves up sweet robotics for dessert. Now, what happens when you let a bunch of mechatronic engineers loose in the kitchen unsupervised? Well, you get robotic food. It's not enough that food should look good and taste great. These guys have got it to dance as well, and it's all 100% edible. Matt, this RoboCake is a modern wonder of the world.
It is pretty cool. I can hardly wait till the next big celebration I've got where I go, I need a cake.
Yes,
and of course,
it has to be robotic.
A robotic edible on top is obviously an essential now.
Yeah, and so you're not going to chip your teeth on any machinations or anything, like any little gears and stuff?
Well, that was one of the things I thought of. I thought, well, how do they do that? How do they have something moving, some servo, some actuator, some arm? How do you put that in something edible? And I thought, well, maybe you could make it out of something that's hard, so bread you could bake to be hard, so you could make something that was something like that where you baked it to be hard, but no.
But if there's any moisture there, it's going to go soggy as well, so you've got to be careful about that.
So you have to use it straight away. So I looked at what they did, and they've got a few interesting things. So if you're interested, go and look for a video. Osaka, Japan, this just a couple of weeks ago was where they showed this off, Expo 2025. And the whole idea here was a bit of a collaboration. There's a project called the Robo Food Project, a European Union funded project. About 3.5 million euros were put into this a few years ago.
Sorry, people thought, yes, we definitely need robotic food.
Correct. Someone who was happy to put 3.5 million euros into it said,
Right.
This is the thing. It wasn't just you and I down at the pub saying robotic food, hey, cool.
I can think, it's a good novelty, but there's got to be if you're going to put that much money into it, there's got to be a bigger purpose. But anyway.
You don't think a dancing gummy bear on a cake is a good enough purpose? Surely there seems to be a reasonable purpose. So they got together, they used some researchers out of Switzerland and Italy, and then got some pastry chefs out of Switzerland. And the combination now with the work they've done over 4 years, mind you, 4 years of collaboration, 4 years of work and millions of euros, you've now got to the point where you've got a few things. First thing is some LED candles that are powered by dark chocolate. So you can light them up as an LED and then eat them.
The power of the dark side.
That's right. And I like my dark chocolate, so I now am convinced that it gives me extra power. So I'm happy with that.
Good stuff.
And that's one pretty simple one. But the one I do particularly like are gummy bears that dance. And so this is where we get back to those actuators. The battery, if you want to call it that in these, is made up of vitamin B2, activated carbon, edible electrolytes, which I kind of think most electrolytes would be edible anyway, and also quercetin, and that's an antioxidant that we find in things like apples and onions. Mix those together and they generate some form of power, some form of energy, and then using a pneumatic system. So an internal pneumatic system is the way they make the gummy bear dance.
Right, so they just pump air through it and that makes them stand up or sit down.
So I thought of the car yard that you drive past where you see the big dancing thing.
Yeah.
And I kind of imagine a small version of that. There's obviously got a pump that's just blowing air into it and then it flaps around its arm. So I imagined that's a bit what it was like. So the gummy bear sits on top. It does its dancing. It's getting the power to inject air into it from the combination of those devices I just talked about. And then when you eat it, it's got a flavour that seemed, from the reports that I read, a flavour that seems like it's nice-ish at the beginning because you've got gummy bear. Gummy bears are typically made of some gelatin, some syrup, and maybe some colours in there as well. So that's nice. But then the part that drives it's got a bit of a tangy taste to it. So it'd be like having a chocolate with maybe a bit of ginger inside. My dad used to love ginger chocolates and I couldn't stand the ginger taste. So that's what I imagined when I thought about that. I thought chocolate with a tangy kick at the end and went, that's like those ginger chocolates.
And perhaps just a hint of hydraulic fluid as well.
Maybe, just to keep it all lubricated. So I'm with you. I went, that's pretty cool. Great for a celebration, but it's a lot of money to spend on just a bit of a novelty. Having said that, we spend a lot of money on novelty stuff in a whole range of areas, so maybe that's not so bad. But
no, there'll be a market for this, for
sure.
sure.
There is. They're talking about a market in emergency nutrition. Maybe
in emergency nutrition.
So you've got
for people who definitely need their cakes to dance.
Well, you're being a bit extreme now, James.
Life and death. If I don't get a dancing gummy bear.
So imagine building a drone that could fly into a disaster area that you could eat. Now, that's my idea. That's not their idea. I'm just. I want to think of emergency nutrition. I wasn't thinking of. I desperately need a gummy bear. What? The supermarket's closed.
Yeah, right. So you make part of the transport. That's consumable.
That might be completely impractical. That was the idea I had when I thought emergency nutrition. I didn't go where you went. But
no, we're doing it now. So that's where we're putting the next $3 or $4 million.
That's right. Something like that where you might get in there. Maybe different ways of delivering medicine. So again, if you're in an area where you can't get medicine in there for a whole range of reasons, it might be disaster. It might be areas where there's not good transport in. You could send something in that the mechanism to delivery was also the mechanism to give you the food or the medicine that you wanted. I'm clutching at straws. So.
This sounds like Alice in Wonderland with the bottle that says, a little thing that says "eat me" or "drink me" or whatever.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So this thing lands by your side in the disaster zone and says, "Eat me."
One of the things I did read said that RoboCake merges indulgent culinary art with cutting edge technology. I think that's more where it is. It's indulgent culinary art is where it's probably at. So fascinating, interesting. I can hardly wait till you can buy them commercially because I'm going to get one on something. I don't care whether it's on the kids' birthdays, some celebration, whatever. What the heck, Christmas Day. I just think the concept sounds cool. And then show everyone how tough you are by picking up the dancing gummy bear and snapping its head off and eating it. That sounds pretty awesome to me.
Portable battery power stations are becoming quite the must-have accessory these days. About the size of a full bag of groceries and about the same weight, they bring a level of convenience to your life that you never realised you needed. Matt, I was given one as a Christmas gift several years ago and had no idea how I was going to use it. But I've got to say, it came in very handy, or has come in many, many times.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So what's been the most common thing you've used it for?
Well, probably, I've had a puncture on a tyre on a lawnmower, ride-on lawnmower. And so rather than get the puncture fixed, I just keep pumping it up every time I need to use it, and then it lasts just long enough for a couple of days, and then I've got to pump it up again. Right. But that's been the best way, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So we do know that people buy portable generators. So generators are becoming more and more common. They're getting a bit better. They're a bit quieter now. They can produce more power. They're nice, clean sine wave they produce. But you're still pumping rubbish into the air. You're still burning petrol to use them. Yeah. So not ideal, but quite convenient for a whole range of uses, and that's really where we're headed with these. These are portable battery power stations, so they're big power stations like a Jenny, but they're able to power devices much larger. So often you think of a portable battery, you're thinking of something that might charge your phone up once or twice, and that's something you put in your pocket. But these are things that would be generator size. So I'm talking about ones that might be 16 kilograms, 20 kilograms, something that's a bit hefty, but small enough to still carry. I mean,
I reckon ours is probably about 10 kilos.
Yeah. And it really just comes down to the battery that's in them. Obviously, the bigger the battery, the more it's got. So I found one, for example, about $1,500. So you don't want to buy it just on a whim. You might have some practical use for it. But it's got 13 output ports. So it's got a couple of what I would call cigarette lighter adapters, but I think they're called car DC adapters now because it's not politically correct to say cigarette lighter adapter. Who smokes in a car anymore? So you've got a couple of those on there. You've also got USB-A, USB-C, and then 4 standard Aussie outlets, 4 standard Aussie AC outlets, and it can handle a maximum output of about 1,500 watts. So that means you could plug in some lights, a fridge, a microwave. You're going to stop at, say, a toaster or a heater because most toasters, kettles and heaters would probably be 2,000 watts, so they'd be drawing. So 1,500 watts is going to stop there, but you probably don't want to use this to plug in a heater because it probably isn't going to last that long.
Well, we take it with us on long trips, and so on a 10-hour car trip, my son, who still likes to watch DVDs, can power his DVD player as we travel along those long trips. Yeah.
And so it's that sort of thing. So they're getting to the point now where people are buying them for a whole range of reasons. They might want to use it as a backup power supply. So you have a blackout, things in your fridge. Well, I want to keep them fresh, and how long? If the power's out, can I keep my milk for? Oh, it feels okay. Do you want to risk it? Probably not. But if you have one of these, just plug in. And so to give you an idea, a fridge might draw typically 200 watts. So you're going to get maybe 6 hours out of this. So that's covering most blackouts you get. More than 6 hours, you've probably got a really long blackout. But most blackouts are fairly short. So watching that really important footy game, cricket match, whatever, blackout, plug the TV into it, keep watching it. So various things around the house you might use it.
Yes, I've just thought about what I can do now next time we've got a blackout.
That's right. Quick, get that out so I can turn on the TV. I wasn't watching TV before, but I will now. So they're using for a whole range of different things, but also that portability, that flexibility in the car. Yeah. Go out on a camping trip and you want to be able to power some of those things that normally you just go and do without, or a generator. Let's go to this beautiful, quiet, peaceful area, then fire up the generator and you've got that running in the background.
Unpowered shed down the back corner of the paddock.
That sort of thing. Yep. Yeah. So I would love people that do market days to get onto this because sometimes you go to morning markets. I love going to morning markets. There's a whole range of different things there. And then, of course, you've got a bunch of Jennies running behind them, powering the various machines and lights and various activities that are going there. You think, it's not really the beautiful, quiet environment I was hoping for with all these generators running. So this is really the modern equivalent. What you're getting, though, the important part here is that you're getting lithium iron phosphate batteries, which are getting better in terms of their density, charge density, better than, say, lithium ion batteries. So you're getting different types of batteries. So that 16 kilos now that might give you, say, 1.2 kilowatt hours, you're going to get more out of that for the same or less weight. So lugging around 16 kilos, not that convenient, but you're getting a reasonable amount of power out of that. But as we keep going forward, we're getting more and more. So this is really the modern Jenny, rather than having to plug it in. The disadvantage, of course, is once it goes flat, then you're kind of stuck a bit, whereas a generator, you can put more petrol in.
Yeah, but, you just keep it lasts so long and you just keep it charged up as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, that's right. And depending on what you do, if you were someone who ran a market stall and you need a certain amount of power for 5 hours on a Sunday morning, then you know whether this one will work or not, or you buy a bigger one.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
I think it's a much nicer alternative.
It was a logical step, I guess. AI is doing all the things that we used to have to put some thought into, like writing songs and solving problems, creating artwork and undertaking research. AI does it all now and at the click of a mouse button. But why wouldn't you get it to do your shopping for you too? ChatGPT is now into bargain hunting, Matt.
There's a Yellow Pages ad back from the 80s, which I hope you remember. It was where the girl, a very young girl, probably 5 or 6 years of age, rings and the guy answers and Project Hardware, and this very young voice comes on the phone and he starts treating her like a very young girl, thinking, oh yeah, she wants to buy a drill for her daddy. And then she asks a question that's got a whole range of technical things. I want variable speed gears, I want hammer switch action. And he goes, oh yeah, the Boss CSB 700RE, 2RE will do that. So he's a bit confused by all this technical knowledge. And then she starts rattling off a few more things, and that's great, but I want one with a keyless chuck. And oh, okay. Then he starts pulling out the book to look through it all.
You
I'll just look
remember
at
this ad very well. It had its impact on you.
It did. I absolutely loved it because the punchline at the end of the ad, which is why I've remembered it some 40 or 30 years later, is that he says, so how long have you been researching drills? And she goes, oh, around 20 minutes. And, of course, up comes the ad at the end, shop smarter, Yellow Pages. Yeah. And what I loved about that ad, which I find myself doing sometimes, is you become an expert, in inverted commas, pretty quickly when you start talking to people who sell these different items. So if you're looking around for whatever it is, blue widgets, and you start making a few phone calls, and I'm going back to the old days here, you picked out the Yellow Pages and you'd learn something from the first guy and he'd say, oh no, you've definitely got to get the blue widget size 20. That's the only one to get. And you go, okay, right. And you don't go and buy it off that guy. You ring the next guy and he starts talking about, well, the size 21s are common, but they've got an issue with, and you suddenly learn a bit more. And after you talk to 4 or 5, and so just like the young girl on the ad, you're suddenly quoting all these stats and specs to people who go, wow, you know your blue widgets, don't you? And you go, well, I didn't 20 minutes ago. We've now got the internet. And I actually find it's a real issue with me because I've got a condition known as perfectionism. And I don't like to make a purchase until I'm convinced.
Unless you've got the very best one.
And not necessarily the very best, because sometimes that just means you pay a lot of money, but the very best suited for what I want. Right. So it sometimes involves lots of websites, and I still make good old-fashioned phone calls because sometimes you just get a little tidbit from someone, a bit of information. So you go through, so to buy something simple, I can suddenly spend hours doing the research on that because I want to make sure I'm getting all the information and getting it all gathered together. It's like a research project for me, and then make the final decision because I don't want to get buyer's remorse the next day. I don't want to go, oh, what? I missed that thing.
I could have got that one.
Yeah,
have someone come up to you and go, oh, you bought that one. Why'd you buy that one?
Yeah, don't say that to me.
That's the worst, the nightmare.
It is. So now ChatGPT is at the point where you can start to use ChatGPT for your purchases. Now, this is a major problem for Google and Facebook because at the moment, and let's face it, let's be real here, it's probably not going to stay this way, but at the moment, ChatGPT is not paid any money by any advertisers to go and promote a certain product. You can just use ChatGPT and ask for a whole range of information about a product. But Google last year generated about $240 billion from advertising revenue. Wow. Facebook, or Meta to be more accurate, generated $132 billion from their advertising. So they don't really love the idea of us going to something like ChatGPT for free and asking about information. But when you go to ChatGPT, you're not getting sponsored ads. That's the first thing. Fantastic. And they're saying at the moment, no, we're just going to give you information. You say what you want, and the lovely thing about ChatGPT is it knows you. It remembers what you like. It knows that you like orange, not green. So when you're looking for things, it might recommend things that are orange, not green. It'll remember your preferences, and then you can give it information in a contextual format, and it will give you information back that's relevant to you. So it's doing that, chasing around the phone calls, all the rest of it for you. and then it comes back and says, here's what I would recommend.
Here's your best options.
Now, it can go and find sites for you where to buy it, so that's great, but at the moment, they're not collecting money on the way. I'm sure they will. I'm sure at some point in the time they'll go, when you click on this, we get some commission out of this because we've sent you to their site and then you're going to make a purchase. So that will happen, but at the moment...
So then it's not an objective search.
Correct, that's right.
Subjective,
so use it while it's pure at the moment. So,
all right.
And I do subscribe.
Going home to use it right now.
That's right. I do pay for chat. I pay my $20 a month or whatever it is for chat because I kind of like the idea that maybe you'll have to pay to use something like chat so that you can keep it pure. Because Google, I don't pay for Google, but I know they're making money out of advertising that gets thrown up in front of me. Yeah. And I almost feel like I want to go below where it says sponsored and give me the first real result, and I want to ignore those sponsored ads, but sometimes it's so easy just to click on the first one and have a look at that. So have a look at chat. It'll go through, give you the answers, give you information back about what you basically give it to it in terms of information, narrow down a shortlist for you, do all that research, that running around for you, but do it all quickly as well, and presumably do the pseudo phone calls by getting all that information off the web. So fascinating. Have a go. I've already tried using it a few times, and I'm pretty convinced it's good in terms of scouring the market, finding what you want and giving you back the details.
Amazing.
Yeah.
The EV market is now coming at all angles to drag the EV hesitant into ownership. And when I say all angles, I mean all angles. Slate Auto is an EV startup company that's taken a novel approach to building an electric ute. And as a tribute to your grandpa's old stripped-back bare-bones farm ute, there is this fancy little... Oh, there is very little that's fancy pants about this new Slate truck, Matt.
It feels like a bit of the battle of the multi-billionaires to me. Elon Musk obviously is backing Tesla. Many people think he started Tesla. He didn't. No. He saw it and went, I think that's a good company to invest in, and threw a bit of money their way, and then now is basically taking control. Jeff Bezos, another man with a few too many billion in his back pocket, obviously from Amazon fame, has decided to back Slate Auto. Now, Slate is taking a slightly different approach. Tesla took the approach of let's give people everything, let's give them the flashiest car they can possibly get and cover up the cost of the battery. Because some of the extra features you get in a car, we all know the $1,000 extra for that feature probably costs $20 to add. Or some cars, we've done a story before on BMW, who actually build all their cars with the same heated seats, and it's just a matter of whether you pay for the heated seats, whether that feature gets turned on or not. So we know the manufacturing process is probably pretty cheap to add those features on, but the Tesla approach was cover up the cost of the battery by all the extra features you're getting. That's fine, that worked at the time. Slate Auto says, let's take a complete minimalist approach, because Jeff Bezos says, sure, Elon's taking care of the rich people, but I want to take care of the everyday man, says Jeff Bezos with billions of dollars in his back pocket. And so the Slate truck, and I apologise to the non-American listeners, truck obviously means ute in normal terms, but in America they call their utes trucks. I get confused because I call a truck. I think of a big 18-wheeler, a big semi-trailer as a truck, but of course in America they call it a truck. So they've brought out a truck that's priced at about US 20 grand, so maybe 30 grand in Aussie dollars. So that's not too bad. Now, the way they've done that is they've literally said, we're not giving you anything flash. So you're getting no stereo, no infotainment system, not even power windows. I'm not sure what people would do with a handle and a winder on a window. They'd look at that and go, where's the button? How do I press the button on this?
On this EV ute.
That's right.
Yeah.
So they've really taken this minimalist approach, which I love the idea of.
It sounds like the Flintstones movie.
It does a bit, doesn't it?
It's interesting that they've chosen Slate as the name. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, maybe that's it. I hadn't thought about that. So the base model, that I said about 20 grand, is not huge range on it either. So you're getting about 240 kilometres of range. But again, for a tradie that wants a ute to run around their community, they're probably not getting on the road and going on a big long trip. They're probably just going from job to job, and the ute sits there at most job sites most of the time. So you've got that. Now, there's a couple of things here as well with their specs. So 0 to 100 in 8 seconds. That's still not too bad. Now, most people start getting excited about EVs because they go 0 to 100 in 3 seconds. But 8 seconds, if you had I had an old V8 ute many years ago when I first got my licence, and it was a powerful, loud, noisy thing that did 0 to 100 in about 9 seconds. I thought it went like the clappers at the time, but of course I've researched it later. I went, it wasn't that fast. So 0 to 100 in 8 seconds is still okay. The other thing I like about it is its top speed is 145 k's an hour. Now, I have no need to go 145 k's an hour. I have no need to go 220 kilometres an hour that most vehicles will go.
And unlikely to need to go that fast in a work truck.
Exactly right. And let's face it, if you do 145 and you get caught, you haven't got a licence anymore.
No,
so
right. Yeah.
I always laugh when the speedos on a car show 200 or 220, and it's one of the specs that manufacturers always seem to put in their top speed of 239 kilometres an hour. You go, when am I going to use that?
Yeah.
Unless I live in Germany and drive an
Germany,
autobahn, then I'm not going to use that in practical terms. So it's actually someone has said, let's just give people the basics of what they need and not put fancy features on. So 240.
It's like the mobile phones that only make calls and take text messages.
Exactly right, yeah, because some people just go, I don't want the fancy features.
This is a revolution in technology.
It is.
It's
going backwards
in many different fields now. This is blowing me away.
It is. So the base unit's got 57 kilowatt hour battery. As I said, that's about 240 kilometre range. They realise that range might be an issue for some people, so you can buy the 84 kilowatt hour battery, which gives you about 400 kilometre range. So there's that. But in general, it's just about a nice, simple, affordable design. And I talked about it before that I ran into a guy not literally, just bumped into someone who was charging, who had a BYD ute, which is a plug-in hybrid. It wasn't a pure EV, but he loved this. When I was charging up at a supercharger, he was talking about it to me and loved the power points in the back. And just 2 days ago, I was at another charging station and saw a guy with a BYD SUV, so not the ute, but same sort of experience.
Yeah.
Loved the plug-in. I use the battery most of the time, and I love the power points in the back of the canopy there, so I can use those. So in this scenario, I can just see tradies going, I want something simple. I want something I can plug in my tools in the back of it. I only do 50 kilometres a day, so 240 kilometres is fine. Maybe I'll go the slightly bigger one. But the important part as well is they've still gone for all the modern safety features. So I've got forward collision warning, active emergency braking, 8 airbags in the cabin. So in general, you've got the things that you want to have in there in terms of need, but you don't have all the fancy features. And if you want to listen to some music, leave your AirPods in and have your phone playing, and then you can listen to music while you drive with that. So
and get used to literally winding down windows.
But the other thing is, I thought about that. How often do you wind down your window? What do you wind down your window for? If you go, I don't buy takeaway food.
Don't even have.
Forget windows. That's right. Nothing at all. But sorry, if you went through a takeaway, I mean, I don't eat takeaway food, so I don't drive through the various big food chains. So you might need to wind down your window for that. But apart from that, you don't.
No, guaranteed. As soon as they take away the winder for the window and the window just stays up all the whole time, that's when you need the window down.
Yeah, true.
That very day.
That's right. So I love the idea. Amazon is still backing, Jeff Bezos' Amazon is still backing EV. They've got 20,000 electric delivery vans already, and their target is 100,000. So maybe there's some cross promotion here that Jeff Bezos is doing and putting Slate trucks into Amazon. But I love the idea. They're coming out your way.
Now, feeding a global population that's swelling out of control is going to be an ongoing challenge for the foreseeable future. As a species, we will need to employ technology in inventive ways to produce foods that we love to eat, like 3D printing our food. Folks, we knew this was coming. Matt, I love a deep-fried calamari ring with tartare sauce, but are you going to tell me that I can have this fish and chip shop delicacy without enduring a single squid?
It's interesting. I reckon by the time you put some batter on, drop your tartare as you mentioned, you could put a bit of cardboard in the middle. And you probably wouldn't know the difference.
Probably just rubber band.
Probably is. Sometimes they feel like that, don't they? So the National University of Singapore, back in 2023, produced some 3D printed vegan calamari rings. Fantastic. Great breakthrough at the time. But when they did their testing and had some blind testing for some participants, the people could pick it every single time because even though it was the same makeup, the texture wasn't quite right.
Texture is a big part of food too.
Exactly right. You chew on something, and even once you get past the batter and the tartare sauce, you realise that something inside just didn't have that stringy feel of calamari. So they've gone away and they've worked on this for the last 2 years. And after 2 years of working on that, they've now got their new 3D printed calamari, new and improved recipe, a realistic texture. And they found that when they went and looked at the microscopic imaging of real calamari versus what they were producing, there were some small structural voids inside the real calamari. So they had to try and create that with the 3D printing. And they've done, well, near enough to that. So now people, when they're doing their blind taste testing, are going, tastes about the same. maybe I can pick it. So they've actually been getting to the stage where they're tricking most people, or not so much tricking, but they can't pick the difference between real calamari and this.
Wow.
It doesn't sound great when you look at the ingredients. Mung bean protein and powdered microalgae.
Stop there.
I don't know they should lead the marketing campaign with those two ingredients, but that's really what it's made up of.
But whatever you can do to include the vegans in your party.
Well, that's right. But I think your point's relevant. We've got to feed a bunch of people, and we might not be able to keep fishing or farming animals or basically producing wildlife or not so much wildlife, but animals, enough of those to be able to feed the population. So we're going to rely more and more on plants. If we can produce plants that still make us feel like we're eating something that's animal-based, but it's plant-derived, then that sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
These are a little bit better than calamari in terms of their content, so they've got about 5% more protein and a little bit less fat. But in general, if you can trick people to thinking they're eating calamari, then what's the difference?
You tell me that squid have got fat on them?
Oh, just a touch. Probably more in the batter, actually.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I think this is really happening, even though we have talked about 3D printed foods and lab-produced meats, for example. We've talked about a few of those different ones. It's getting there to the point where you can actually say, well, I want to eat something plant-based, but I want it to taste the same, and it will taste pretty much the same. 3D printing is quite incredible.
Yeah, and that vegan needs something to eat at your party.
That's right, exactly.
Now, I always thought that charging people to use Wi-Fi was a bit on the nose, especially so in 2025. Surely everyone can get it for free. Now, if you have been following the news, then you might have heard about how Qantas has come under fire for a number of misgivings in recent times. Perhaps offering free Wi-Fi now is a bit of an olive branch to patrons. But do we still call that super generous, Matt?
Well, I'm actually I don't care if I have to pay for it. I just want them to have Wi-Fi on the international flights. It's one of my great frustrations with Qantas. You fly domestically, you've got Wi-Fi. Pay for it free, who cares? Because they don't charge you much anyway, but it's just a way to keep in touch because you can't be out of touch for a couple of hours, James. You can't,
it's a long time
you can't lose connectivity. And on international flights, you fly Emirates or Japan Airlines or United. They've all got Wi-Fi on the international flights. Some you pay for, some free, but you jump on a Qantas plane and I've got a lot of confidence, a lot of faith in Qantas. They've got a wonderful safety record, but you jump on one of their flights, go international, and you don't have access. Now, I get a bit annoyed about that, but I live with it. But people on the ground who are associated with me get more annoyed because when I land and then I get access to some internet again, I synchronize all my emails and then they get bombarded with 20 or 30 emails at the same time rather than getting them spaced out over the length of the flight. So this is more for those people on the ground than it is for me. But finally, they're getting to the point where they've now launched free Wi-Fi on flights to Hong Kong and Singapore from Australia. And finally, we'll get some trans-Tasman flights later this year and Europe later this year. So it seems like they're catching up to the rest of the world. When you stop and think about it for a second, though, what I love about the technology is we've progressed. For most of them are still using geostationary satellites. So you've got satellites, we've talked about it before, approximately 36,000 kilometres above the Earth. The satellite stays, in relative terms, above our spot on Earth. So that stays there. But then you've got a plane that's flying about 900 kilometres an hour, going across that geostationary signal and being able to pick up that signal and give you some type of connection. So that's pretty impressive to me. I think of we're sitting here stationary, we've got internet access, and then you get in a car and you're going along. But now we're up in the air at 30,000 feet at 900 kilometres an hour. Sorry to mix imperial and metric. and then picking up that. But some planes, we've talked about a little bit before, some airlines now are going to some low Earth orbit rather than 36,000 kilometres because you get latency with that. So you start to get to low Earth orbit around 340 to 550 kilometres above the Earth. Those satellites are orbiting the Earth about once every hour and a half.
Yeah, hour and a half, yeah.
They're travelling relative to us at about 27,000 kilometres an hour. So now you've got something that's spinning around at that speed and a plane going along at 900 kilometres an hour, and somehow with our technology we're able to make those connect and give us speeds that are pretty impressive on a plane.
Yeah.
And I talked to a guy the other day who does some flying, some private plane flying, and they've put some Starlink connections in some of their private planes, and he said when he's on the plane flying along at 30,000 feet, his internet connection on the plane is actually better than his internet connection that he's got at his house. So quite incredible. So it's there. We know how to do it. And Qantas is finally saying, you know what? We should join this bandwagon. And I'll be thankful. And I guarantee they will get more international passengers out of this, because I think some people would make the choice, because I know I've done it, where I've chosen everything else being equal. I go, I'm going to choose that carrier over that carrier because I know they've got Wi-Fi on their planes and this one hasn't. Yeah, so I'm sure there'll be some people who choose that, and good luck to them. And it should be there for everyone. What's going on with the world if we can't connect?
That's right. Yeah, everyone needs Wi-Fi all the time. Here's another story from the files of technology born from the natural world. Now, if you've ever seen a shark swimming, then you'll have noted the effortless movement. These huge bodies go from cruise mode to chase mode in a heartbeat, and they cut through the water seemingly without resistance. So it would make sense for aeronautical engineers to lean into that shark skin model when they're designing the fuselage for their aircraft, Matt.
So water's actually interesting. I was thinking about this the other day. Water, I was thinking about it because I was looking at this story, but water, when we're underwater, creates incredible drag on us. So we've got all this surface area of drag around. If we're a shark or we've got a boat or a ship in the water, all this drag. But then if you look at a Formula One race and you've got tyres on the road and a bit of wet track, suddenly it's very slippery. So in that case, it's like water reduces the friction, minimises the friction, but you put water all around us and it maximises the friction. So water's a bit of a tricky beast. It's the most inconvenient. We want less friction underwater.
Well, you still need the water underwater for thrust as well. So you need to be able to push off on it to be able to get yourself going, but then you don't want it to drag you too much.
So you want the friction at the back to be able to give you the thrust if you're a tail fin, for example, but you don't want it at the front of you for the resistance going through. So it's a tricky one. But when you look at a shark, they've got these microscopic grooves on the shark skin that actually reduce the drag on the surface. If
anyone's ever felt shark skin, it feels really smooth one way, but really rough the other way.
Yeah, so quite fascinating. And how many times we talk about this, we, as in the global world of science and research, looks at nature and says, hey, that looks pretty interesting. I wonder if we can use that. And that's exactly what they've done here. They've looked at shark skin and they said, well, if we can take that same concept with some microscopic grooves and put that on an aircraft, maybe we could reduce the amount of friction. So they've tried that and they've done some tests and they've found a 4% improvement. Now you go, 4% big deal, but when you talk about spending hundreds of millions of dollars on jet fuel, maybe $1 billion or more on jet fuel a year, and you get a 4% saving, that adds up to a few dollars. So that's exactly what they're doing now. They've done. And
does it also equate to a decrease in time for flight as well?
Well, at this stage, they probably get to the stage where they're flying below Mach 1 from a sound perspective. Yeah. So I think the airlines that fly along at 900 kilometres an hour could go a bit faster, but they're probably getting a bit too close to the speed of sound, so they probably stay there for that reason. So there was nothing in the article I read about getting there quicker, because they're probably at that sort of natural limit now.
It's just about cheaper.
Just about cheaper, more efficient, if you like, less power or less energy being used to get from A to B. So when you look at so this was an Australian company that came up with this, Australian company called Microtau, MICROTAU, and they've done a deal already with Delta Airlines in the US and Jetstar here in Australia to test the technology. So they've started trialling the patches on Boeing 737 and Jetstar's doing them on Airbus A320s. So essentially they put patches, not across the whole plane, not across the entire surface, but patches on different parts of the plane in obviously some sort of scientific way, not just throw a few patches here and there. And then based on that, they're doing more testing to see what the best outcome is. Obviously, they've done a bunch of wind tunnel testing. But I actually wonder about the passengers who are walking up to a plane, and I get a bit nervous sometimes when I jump on a prop plane, and just where the propeller spins, there's usually an extra piece on the fuselage that's riveted over the top of just that area. Yeah. And I think, so did the propeller come loose one day and it flew into the side of the plane? Do they do that as a precaution? I'm just not sure. So now imagine me walking up to a Delta Airlines plane or a Jetstar plane, and I'm seeing patches, not just one patch in a certain spot, but these almost random patches over the plane going, did this have some sort of explosion, or did someone throw a hand grenade at this plane? Why are there patches all over it? And I'm sure
have they fixed it properly?
That's right. What's the glue around there? Can I check those rivets? So don't be alarmed, folks, if you get on a Delta plane or a Jetstar plane and you see patches on there. This is all part of the testing that they're doing. And if they can do this, obviously, a bit like the wing tips on planes, once someone did wing tips, I went, no, it seems better. Then before you knew it, Wingtips, and it's. I reckon it seemed like it was overnight. I remember reading about wingtips, researching them. That was interesting, and I saw a plane with wingtips, and then every plane I got on after that seemed to have wingtips. A bit of confirmation bias, I'm sure, but once you get into something like this in the aircraft industry, once it's proven, then everyone wants to be on it. So good luck to Microtower. If they can prove this and prove it to be cost effective, then absolutely you'll see planes with patches all over them, which might be quite fascinating.
And to the best of our knowledge, no sharks were injured in the making of this story.
Hopefully not. No. I haven't checked with the sharks.
It's not real skin that they're sticking on the outside.
No, I hope not.
Well, here's a zesty solution to a modern problem. Now, with the kibosh put on nuclear power for the foreseeable future here in Australia, the market for alternative energy sources remains well and truly open. Open for opportunities like Pomelo power. Firstly, Matt, what is a Pomelo? And secondly, how can I get it to feed me rich, juicy electricity?
Well, you can feed lots of rich, juicy things. Pomelo is basically a big mother citrus.
Right.
I think they're large. I think they're 1 or 2 kilos.
It would have been as easy as just Googling it, but I thought I'd just ask you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So lucky I Googled it beforehand.
So like a big orange.
A big mother orange,
right.
Not just a big orange, a big mother orange.
That's
right.
Okay,
yeah.
right.
At least 5 oranges is in terms of the weight equivalent.
Okay, you're right. How many swimming pools?
Yeah, exactly. So what do you reckon orange weighs? Maybe 300 grams?
Yeah.
400 grams?
Yeah.
So I reckon these things are about 5 or 6 oranges built into one. Wow. So they're big, but part of the problem, but now part of the solution, is the fact that up to 50% of the total weight of a pomelo is the skin. So we cut the skin off to get into the juicy fruit in the middle of all that.
And that juicy fruit's about the size of an orange.
Probably, by the time you get rid of all that skin. So why not use some orange skin, or pomelo skin, for electrification? So they use triboelectrification. And we've talked about triboelectrifying things before, where you've got triboelectric layers. And essentially when you pair the peel of the pomelo, enough P's in there for me, with a plastic polyamide film, you actually get 2 triboelectric layers, and the movement between those two actually generates electricity. Wow. So using that now, again, I don't know we're going to replace nuclear power stations with it. I think we're going to do small things. So basically you could have something to generate a small amount of power.
But I wonder if this is really cheap, a really cheap and easy way of getting electricity.
It sounds clumsy to me. I've got to peel that big, that big juicy fruit, and then go and get the pomelo and put it into
a nuclear power station in the backyard.
That's right, why not? So you'd probably use it for areas a bit like the disaster areas we talked earlier about. You'd use it in areas where you couldn't easily get some power. You could actually use something that was natural and maybe was grown in that particular area and generate electricity. I'm not sure if they've really worked out exactly how they're going to use it yet, but the great part about it is we're working at different ways to generate electricity in a whole range of different levels. So whether it be nuclear size level or small level, there are different ways to generate electricity. It's not just burn coal, that's it, end of story. There are ways we can generate electricity, and this is just another one of those ways. Now, this is the first bit of testing they've done so far. This is the University of Illinois has been doing this testing, but is it going to change? Is it going to be other ways? Are we going to work out how we can produce electricity en masse? Because there are 8 million tonnes annually of pomelo produced around the world. So you've got a fair bit of skin there if you can work out a way to produce this en masse.
And this just might encourage more to be produced. You might get people jumping on the pomelo bandwagon.
And it could be other things as well. So, for example, there are some other biodegradable triboelectric materials, for example, lotus leaves, silk. So it's not just the pomelo that you can actually use. So you might come up with other things as well. So you might get to the stage where you're producing it en masse, but at this stage it's just, look at this is fascinating. What can we do with this? How can we use this in a practical sense? Is it worth exploring? Sure, let's look at it and then go further from there. So quite fascinating.
Very good. So for my son with autism, the characters in Thomas the Tank Engine stories, they served a crucial role in teaching what emotions looked like. The stories elaborate explicitly on who was feeling what, and it's all clearly spelled out on their animated faces. Whereas we all know that the human experience is much, much more subtle. The question is, what exactly are emotions in a quantifiable sense? Matt, you may have something of a Band-Aid solution for that problem at least.
Oh, please, you're killing me now. You're killing me. There is something that's a Band-Aid size solution. Exactly. Well done. So we've got the ability now with technology to measure a whole range of things. And I've told the story a million times about people saying many years ago, oh, you'll never have something you put on your wrist that'll measure your heart rate. A watch, for example, you always need a chest band for that. And, of course, now we have watches that measure a whole range of things in addition to our heart rate.
Exactly.
So we've now got to the stage where some researchers at Penn State University have got something that is the size of a Band-Aid that can measure skin temperature, perspiration levels, heart rate, and blood oxygen saturation. So you go, well, that's great. Well done to you. What are you going to use that for? What's the point of all that? I've got a watch that does my heart rate. I can tell if I'm sweating. Who cares about the rest of it? By using these, and of course the power of AI, by doing a whole range of testing with people, what emotion are you feeling now, and then feeding in your readings, if you like, from these 4 different areas, AI can start to identify, I know what you're feeling now based on those 4 settings without you telling me what you're feeling. With enough data, a large enough data set, then I don't care if you don't want to tell me how you're feeling. I already know how you're feeling because I can measure these 4 parameters. Yeah, wow. So a bit like a lie detector test, we see it in the movies all the time. We can't use it in the court system in Australia, for example, a lie detector, but in the movies it's always used. You know, put me on a lie detector, you'll see I'm telling the truth.
Yeah.
But again, a lie detector is trying to sense some of these things in your body where you're not saying what you're really meaning, but your body might pick up that you've got some sort of stress levels because you're telling a lie. And it's similar here where by measuring these things, it can tell what emotion you've got. Now, in the testing up they've done, the feeding in of a bunch of data, then they brought in subjects, don't tell us how you're feeling, we're just going to try and pick it up. They might show them different pictures, they might talk to them in different ways. And at this stage, from what people are saying, assuming they're being honest, and what the system is picking up, they're getting about 93% accuracy rate. So I started thinking about a psychologist or a psychiatrist dealing with various people, dealing with patients who may be not wanting to give away a lot of their emotions, maybe stick the sticker on you, now let's have a talk. There are times when the court says you must go and talk to a psychiatrist before we can go to the next step. And I think if I was a psychiatrist, that'd be incredibly difficult for me to have that conversation with someone when you don't want to give me anything. Or, more importantly, you might be trying to portray something completely different to suit what the court wants to hear rather than what we need to hear as the actual outcome. It could just be some people that are a bit problematic and don't know how they feel themselves and just picking up from that. But getting to the stage where you can measure it, don't tell me how you're feeling 0 to 10. Don't tell me your pain level 0 to 10. I'm just going to stick this sensor on and I'm going to use a huge data set to basically feed that information in to see how you're feeling about things.
Yeah. So for mine, what I find really, really interesting about this is that, your heart rate is a very interesting thing to know if you're exercising and whatnot, and skin temperature, all those different parameters that you were talking about. Sorry, I've dropped them. There's moisture on the skin, so detecting sweat. Those are interesting on their own, but to actually stitch it all together and put it together for this purpose, this is a really interesting development. So
there's a whole new area called emotional AI wearables. Not wearables anymore. Wearables were so yesterday. We now need to subcategorize our wearables. And your wearable can tell you how you're feeling. That's right. So even if you don't know. Emotional AI wearables are the thing. So forget the mood ring, the old mood rings of the 80s where they just change colours randomly, I think. So this will be actually a real mood ring or not a ring, but a real mood device. So it's going to be fascinating, isn't it? Imagine all the data. But then I wonder, where does this take us? That's right. We sort of had a bit of a speculation there, just as you were speaking. But well, where all this data goes to, imagine going to your insurance company and saying, I just need to redo my life insurance. And they say, well, you've been quite down lately, that's right. You? Don't listen to that AI tool. What would it know about me? I'm really happy, okay? So it is a fascinating area, but more and more we'll see of this the wearables market and the subcategories of that. And that's all there is for this episode, folks. This tech cheese board has nothing left but some water cracker crumbs and half a wheel of blue cheese, as there always is left over. Thanks for another excellent serving of Tech Talk, Matt. Thank you. And I am going to go and find where I can buy these bouncing bears. I'm going to ask ChatGPT where I can buy some edible bouncing bears. They're not for sale yet, but I'm sure ChatGPT will find some for me because I want them. I'm just going to have a birthday just for the sake of it so I can have some of these on top of it. And thanks for tuning in to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson once again. It's a tidy little podcast that fits neatly in your pocket for the ultimate convenience.
And I'm your host, James Eddy, bidding you a delightful and productive week. Don't forget to drag a friend along for our next episode in 1 week's time. Until then, take care and all the best to you and your family.